Let me start tonight with education. Amid the ongoing confusion and the bickering as to whether Australian schools should be closed in response to the coronavirus outbreak, a tussle over how much or how little we value teachers has emerged. At a time in which emotions are running high, it's become fashionable to pontificate that teachers are not babysitters. Indeed, complaints that education professionals are being treated like glorified babysitters has become so common, you'd be forgiven for assuming parents are stumbling into the schoolyard after a night out and slipping some cash to their child's teacher before sending them home in an Uber. And nothing, of course, could be further from the truth, and quite rightly so. Anyone with any genuine insights into the reality of a teacher's life knows that they work hard and skillfully, often under trying conditions. So no, teachers are not babysitters, but they are a lifeline for many families. And yes, that includes the working parents of Australia. And despite the baying mob pretending otherwise, that's okay. Millions of highly productive employees wouldn't get much work done between 9 and 3 if they had to attempt to homeschool every day. But the real flaw in this pious carry-on, primarily from well-off commentators, it should be noted, is ignorance of the fact that for many disadvantaged and at-risk children, teachers provide a lot more than just an education. As a senior figure from the education sector told me this week, the real casualties of a closure of schools will be the most vulnerable children in the country. We spent today working out which kids will be more at risk of violence, sexual assault, going hungry, self-harm or having insecure housing without the supports they access at school, they confided. So let's not reduce the complexity of this discussion to a petty spat over parents supposedly viewing teachers as babysitters. Like it or not, there are many Australian children who depend on their teachers for their very welfare, and we do them a disservice by downplaying the vital role that schools play in their lives. Gemma, what are your thoughts on this issue?
Well, if I was allowed to high-five you, Sarah, I'd reach down the camera and give you a distance-appropriate high-five. Look, you've unpacked so much in a relatively short editorial, and I feel like it represents that whole discussion that you've so eloquently captured really does represent things that fall into the bucket of the worst of us. So we're seeing the best and the worst of Australia in this crisis. This whole pious pontificating, as you said, I think that falls into the bucket of the worst of us. Last week, when the Prime Minister announced that schools would stay open, it was this instant sort of baying, why, you know, look at Italy, all of this sort of stuff that doesn't, as the Chief Medical Officer said, we are not Italy, we're not any other country, but some kids are safer at school. And the medical evidence is they are allowed to be at school. They are safe at school, but of course everybody knows better. And I feel like, you know, there are times when we don't appreciate our teachers enough compared to some other countries. That's probably something that we could all admit. But, you know, this whole, oh, woe is me, it's all about me, I'm just a glorified, you're treating me like a glorified babysitter. Nobody I know treats their teachers like that, and certainly every working mum that I know that now has their kids at home is very, very grateful indeed for what they do.
Absolutely. Campbell, what do you think? Because in Queensland, the teachers' union there has been particularly outspoken, and in fact, it was that organisation that used the term I quoted about complaining about being treated like glorified babysitters.
Well, look, my reaction to that, I'm sure many hard-working Queenslanders would be one of disgust at the teachers' union, because at a time when hundreds of thousands of Australians and Queenslanders are losing their jobs, a group that will continue to be paid, will continue to be employed, to be sort of carrying on in the way that the teachers' union was last week, it did them no favours whatsoever. People do respect teachers. People do actually appreciate the work that they do in bringing up our kids. But the teachers' union, if they were speaking for their membership, they let them down seriously. I mean, we've all got to work hard to get through this crisis. The private sector is bleeding. It is absolutely being smashed. And the public sector, at this stage, really isn't wearing any pain. No one's lost their job that I'm aware of, and certainly people haven't taken a pay cut. So if, for example, teachers do have to be babysitters so that frontline workers keeping food in supermarkets, the lights on, the logistics chain going, if that ultimately was required, well then you know what, I'd ask the teachers to do that and do it cheerfully.
Yeah, well said.
Catherine, what do you think about all of this?
Well, I'm right there with Campbell on this one, and I don't have kids, so it's an indulgence I can afford. But I was the child of teachers. My mum was a teacher, my stepdad was a teacher. One of my sisters was a teacher, lifelong teacher. So I've got ultimate huge respect for them. And I don't think they're glorified babysitters. And I think you're right. You're quite right. The baying mob is constituted by a very narrow band. Firstly, they're the Morrison haters who will use any announcement that he's made in the past 2 months to build a case against him. And secondly, there is a vital issue, as you said, that homeschooling is not an option for many people.
Yeah,
if you've got work to do, constructive work at the moment in this economy, you are providing vital income injections to keep other businesses alive, and you're, as you've said, protecting at-risk kids. They're not child-minding, they're trying to do a range of stuff. My argument about teaching for a long time has been it's a high-stress, highly undervalued profession, and I think this might focus a little bit on just how tough it is and how demanding, and warrant a little bit more resourcing for better pay for teachers, make it more attractive, because you've got more law schools than you can poke a stick at in this place, and not enough teachers coming into the system, especially males.
I definitely think at the end of this that... Sorry, no, Gemma, I was just going to say I really do think as a working mum, I've now got 2 young boys at home, and I'm trying to hold down my full-time job working remotely this week on my company's orders. I think I'm someone that's always been very considerate and very appreciative of what my teachers have done, but when the schools go back, I can tell you I will be coming in with presents and thank you cards galore.
Absolutely.
But I feel like also, Sarah, I mean, that and again, like Catherine, I don't have children. I'm a self-anointed world's best auntie, but all through my 17 years in business, my staff are predominantly women, working mums with kids. So I do get a frontline look at what that stress can look like, and particularly now because obviously we're all working remotely. But you teach as a job, and like Catherine, I've got family members who are teachers, my sister-in-law and my aunt, career educators. It's without sounding without wanting to sound trite about it, this is a national crisis. It's a global pandemic. It's your job. And so long as the medical risk was low, and we're told by the Chief Medical Officer that it is, ignore the armchair experts, ignore the self-anointed virologists. Totally. You know, you've got children who need to go to work to school for all of the reasons. You've seen businesses all across different sectors, predominantly hospitality, innovate and change the way they do business so you're in a classroom and it's a different environment. Innovate in that classroom. Educate, lead, innovate.
Absolutely, Gemma, and I mean, there's a lot of technology in a lot of Queensland classrooms, I can say that authoritatively, and I assume other states are there to various degrees. I mean, look, you don't wait to be asked to do something. Don't wait for the Education Department to issue some edict. They'll get that out in about 90 days' time, probably, not to be too cynical about it, but actually look at the ways that you can reach out to families who might not be able to bring their kids to school. Look, I've got a good friend at the moment who actually, those people have actually, would prefer their kids not to be in school because one of the parents is health compromised. And it would be, I'm sure they're looking for their school to actually reach out to them and find ways to actually maintain the contact with the peers in the classroom and the educational process. And that's what any great teacher would be doing right now, trying to find ways to reach out and do with whatever they've got in front of them at the moment.
I think we are in unprecedented times, and the onus on every single Australian worker is to do their bit. And I think, as all of us have touched upon, we are so intertwined and we are dependent on each other, and it's a bit of a furphy to pretend that one sector can opt out or that one sector can say, oh, it's all just gotten a little bit too difficult, I'm going to go and close the doors until this passes, and that doesn't have a flow-on effect. I mean, every single one of us has got our own role to play, and we're just not going to get through this, particularly when there's no end in sight. You know, we've heard things that it could be 6 months until the schools are allowed to reopen if there is a shutdown. We've got to have involvement from every single person. No single sector can just shrug their shoulders and opt out.
No, absolutely. And
You're
as a friend of mine
right.
who's a parent of 3 children, sorry, Catherine, I think there's a bit of a delay, but there's a parent of mine who's got 3 children in a very expensive private school here, you know, is talking about, well, OK, so my child is not being taught, and even though the medical advice, this is last week, is to the contrary, I'm told I shouldn't take my child to school, and yet I'm expected to pay full fees. And that's a whole nother part of this equation that is yet to play out, no doubt. But, you know, it's not something that should be sort of punted off to the side. That chicken has to come home to roost as well.
Absolutely.
And I know, Gemma, you're going to come to this later in terms of the way the media has mishandled or handled this whole matter. But the simple fact is I had the pleasure the other day through Sky sitting with the head of the dental head peak body, who has direct access to that committee that has Greg Hunt and the PM and the extended National Cabinet and the best medical minds in the country. And there's a climate in there of robust debate, and they exchange views frankly, and the best advice they could give was that the schools stay open. Now, I trust those people. I'm not out there, and I love the indulgence of the elitists who are sitting back, again, scorecarding Morrison, but most of them have got nannies. A lot of the poor schmucks trying to keep the supply chain open and keep Port Kembla going and keep oxygen tanks being made in Australia don't have the indulgence of having a nanny around. Or 2 of the people who were tweeting they were glad Dutton was ill, trying to debate whether they'd let their cleaners go. Like, seriously, what kind of people are these?
That's the best and the worst, like we were talking about before. That is 100% the worst, the most self-indulgent, lack of self-awareness, introspective, self-obsessed selfishness. Can I go on any further? Oh dear, my biggest problem is, shall I let my cleaner go? I mean, please spare me. It's like those travellers coming back and pardon my French because this is a family show, but bitching and moaning about the hotels they've been put into. Seriously, nobody's interested. Shut it. Nobody's interested.
Oh, well, I think we're coming. Yeah. I think we're coming to that later on. So let's not get too much into that. But I mean, I think, and getting a bit off the topic about education. But I mean, really, look, I'm just getting sick and tired of that bloke on the ABC who sort of somehow he's the expert, the doctor, and yet you got people in a forum, a national forum, each of the states. You know, each state's got a chief health officer, and yet we've got a bloke on the ABC telling everybody, no, they've got it wrong. Well, like, I would like him to actually really moderate what he's saying. He's not helping at all. And
you're stealing my thunder,
everyone
Cam.
can be an expert.
Well, Campbell, I think we're going to come to that with Gemma's topic. That's right. I think everyone's starting to spill into each other's topic. Well, I think it sounds like we're all in agreement that all of us have got a role to play, and that teachers are absolutely not glorified babysitters, and the only people that are claiming they are rich people that are complaining about what they're going to do with their cleaner. I'd like to have those problems